You've been programmed to believe that changing who you are is a monumental task, requiring years of therapy, endless affirmations, and brutal self-discipline. But what if I told you that quantum identity change is actually a split-second phenomenon that happens naturally when you understand how consciousness really works? What if the reason you're still stuck in patterns that don't serve you isn't because change is hard, but because you've been taught to approach it backwards? Here's what nobody wants you to know. The billionaire class, the self-help industrial complex, they profit from your struggle. They need you to believe that transformation is complicated, expensive, and requires their products, their courses, their endless systems. Because the moment you realize that quantum identity change is as natural as breathing, as instant as flipping a light switch, their entire empire crumbles. I'm about to show you something that will fundamentally shift how you see yourself and your potential. We're going to dive deep into the quantum mechanics of identity, and by the end of this, you'll understand why opportunities aren't coming to you right now, and more importantly, how to become the type of person that opportunities literally hunt down. The first thing you need to understand is that your current identity isn't real. I know that sounds provocative, but stay with me. What you think of as you is actually just a collection of quantum probability waves that have collapsed into patterns based on repeated observation and measurement. Every time you say, "I'm not good with money," "I'm not lucky," "I'm not the type of person who gets opportunities," you're literally collapsing infinite potential into a very limited reality. But here's where it gets fascinating. In quantum physics, we have something called the observer effect. The very act of observation changes the outcome of an experiment. Your consciousness isn't separate from reality. It's actively creating it, moment by moment. When you observe yourself as someone who struggles, someone who's broken, someone who has to chase opportunities, you're literally quantum entangling yourself with that version of reality. Think about this for a moment. Every single day, you wake up and you put on your identity like a costume. You look in the mirror and you see the same person with the same limitations, the same story, the same problems. But what you're actually seeing is yesterday's quantum collapse, yesterday's observation, yesterday's choice about who to be. You're not seeing your true potential. You're seeing the echo of old decisions, the wealthy, the successful, the people who seem to effortlessly attract opportunities. They understand something fundamental about quantum identity that you've never been taught. They know that identity isn't fixed. They know that who you are isn't determined by your past, your circumstances, or your current results. They know that identity is a choice you make in each quantum moment. Let me give you a practical example of how this works. Imagine you're walking down the street and you see someone you'd like to meet. Maybe for business, maybe personally. Most people immediately collapse into their familiar identity. I'm not the type of person who approaches strangers. I'm too shy. They're out of my league. That observation, that measurement of yourself, instantly creates a quantum field where that interaction becomes impossible. But someone who understands quantum identity change does something completely different. They don't observe themselves as the shy person or the inadequate person. They observe themselves as someone who naturally connects with aligned people, someone who creates value wherever they go, someone who attracts meaningful relationships. That observation creates an entirely different quantum field, one where the interaction not only becomes possible but becomes magnetic. This isn't positive thinking or fake it till you make it. This is quantum mechanics. When you change your fundamental observation of who you are, you literally change the probability waves around you. You shift into a parallel reality where different outcomes are not just possible but inevitable. Now, here's why this is so powerful. When it comes to opportunities, opportunities aren't random events that happen to lucky people. Opportunities are quantum possibilities that exist in the field around every single person at all times. The reason you're not seeing them, the reason they're not coming to you, is because your current identity is observing yourself as someone who has to chase, someone who has to work hard, someone who has to prove their worth. But when you quantum shift your identity to someone who naturally attracts opportunities, someone who is inherently valuable, someone who is already successful at the quantum level, the field around you reorganizes. Opportunities that were always there but invisible to your old identity suddenly become obvious. People start reaching out to you instead of you having to reach out to them. Resources start flowing toward you instead of away from you. The science behind this is absolutely mind-blowing. Your heart generates an electromagnetic field that's 60 times stronger than your brain's field. This field extends several feet around your body and carries information about your internal state, your beliefs, your identity. When you're operating from a broken identity, from scarcity, from limitation, that field is broadcasting those frequencies to everyone around you. People unconsciously pick up on that signal and respond accordingly. But when you shift your quantum identity, when you start observing yourself as someone who is already successful, already valuable, already magnetic, your heart field completely changes. It starts broadcasting coherence, confidence, abundance. People feel this shift even before you say a word. They start treating you differently because you're literally emitting different quantum information. This is why some people seem to have all the luck, why opportunities just fall into their lap, why doors open for them everywhere they go. It's not because they're special or chosen or born under a lucky star. It's because they've learned, either consciously or unconsciously, how to observe themselves in a way that creates quantum coherence between their identity and their desired reality. The tragic part is that most people spend their entire lives trying to change their external circumstances while keeping their internal identity exactly the same. They want more money, but they observe themselves as someone who struggles with money. They want better relationships, but they observe themselves as someone who's hard to love. They want more opportunities, but they observe themselves as someone who has to fight for everything they get. This creates what I call quantum resistance. The external reality they're trying to create is completely incoherent with the internal identity they're maintaining. It's like trying to tune into a radio station while broadcasting on a completely different frequency. The signal gets scrambled, the message gets lost, and nothing clear comes through. But when you align your quantum identity with your desired reality, when you start observing yourself as the person who already has what you want, something magical happens. The universe stops resisting you and starts supporting you. Opportunities stop hiding from you and start seeking you out. People stop seeing you as someone who needs help and start seeing you as someone who can help them. Let me share something that might blow your mind. Right now, as you're listening to this, there are infinite versions of you existing in parallel quantum realities. There's a version of you who is wildly successful, who attracts opportunities effortlessly, who lives in complete abundance. There's also a version of you who is stuck, struggling, always chasing, but never catching. The version you experience as real isn't determined by your past, your genetics, or your circumstances. It's determined by which version you observe, which version you identify with, which version you choose to collapse into reality through your conscious attention. Most people are completely unconscious about this choice. They wake up every day and automatically observe themselves as the same limited version they were yesterday. They look for evidence to confirm that identity. They tell stories that reinforce that identity. They make choices that perpetuate that identity. And then they wonder why their life never changes. But you have the power to make a different choice. Right now, in this moment, you can decide to observe yourself as the version who is already successful, already magnetic, already living in the reality you desire. You can choose to identify with your potential instead of your past. You can choose to collapse into the quantum reality where opportunities are hunting you down, instead of the reality where you're hunting them. This isn't about pretending or lying to yourself. This is about recognizing that the identity you think is real is actually just one possibility among infinite possibilities. It's about understanding that you have the power to choose which possibility to make real through your observation, your attention, your conscious identification. When you really get this, when you really understand that identity is a choice and not a fixed fact, everything changes. You stop being a victim of your circumstances and start being the conscious creator of your reality. You stop waiting for opportunities to find you and start becoming the type of person that opportunities can't ignore. The people who seem to have all the luck, who seem to be in the right place at the right time, who seem to effortlessly attract success, they're not special. They've just learned how to consciously choose their quantum identity instead of unconsciously accepting the identity that was programmed into them by society, by their family, by their past experiences. Think about someone you know who seems to naturally attract opportunities. Really think about them for a moment. How do they carry themselves? How do they talk about themselves? How do they respond when challenges arise? I guarantee you'll notice that they observe themselves differently than most people do. They see themselves as capable, as valuable, as someone who naturally attracts good things. And because they observe themselves that way, reality responds accordingly. This is the secret that the self-help industry doesn't want you to know, because it would put them out of business overnight. You don't need years of therapy to change your identity. You don't need expensive courses or complicated systems or endless affirmations. You just need to understand how quantum observation works and start consciously choosing which version of yourself to identify with. But here's where most people get stuck. They try to change their identity from the same level of consciousness that created their current identity. They use their old limited way of thinking to try to create a new unlimited way of being. And it doesn't work because you can't solve a quantum problem with classical thinking. The shift has to happen at the quantum level, at the level of pure observation, pure choice, pure identification. You have to be willing to completely abandon your attachment to your current version of yourself, even if that version has a compelling story, even if that version gets sympathy, even if that version feels familiar and safe. This is what I call quantum identity death. The old version of you, the broken version, the struggling version, has to die for the new version to be born. Not metaphorically, but literally at the quantum level. You have to stop observing yourself as that person. Stop identifying with that story. Stop collapsing into that reality. And here's what's beautiful about this process. The moment you truly let go of your old identity, the moment you stop defending it and justifying it and explaining it, space opens up for your true identity to emerge. Not the identity you think you should have, but the identity that's been waiting in the quantum field for you to choose it. This true identity isn't something you have to create or build or develop. It's something you have to discover, something you have to allow, something you have to become willing to receive. It's been there all along, broadcasting its signal, attracting its opportunities, living its reality in parallel dimensions, waiting for you to tune in. When you make this shift, when you quantum leap from your broken identity to your true identity, opportunities don't just increase, they completely transform. Instead of opportunities that require you to prove yourself, you start attracting opportunities that recognize your inherent value. Instead of opportunities that drain your energy, you start attracting opportunities that amplify your power. Instead of opportunities that you have to chase, you start attracting opportunities that pursue you. The reason this happens is because your true identity is naturally coherent with abundance, with success, with magnetic attraction. Your broken identity was artificially created through conditioning, through trauma, through false beliefs about who you're supposed to be. But your true identity is quantum aligned with your highest potential, with your deepest purpose, with your most authentic expression. So here's the question that's going to change everything for you. What if the version of yourself that you think is real is actually the illusion? And the version of yourself that seems too good to be true is actually the truth? What if you've been identifying with a quantum possibility that doesn't serve you, when you could be identifying with a quantum possibility that transforms everything? Are you ready to find out what happens when you stop defending your limitations and start embracing your true quantum identity? The first step in quantum identity change is understanding what I call the coherence principle. Most people are living in complete quantum chaos. They wake up identifying as one person, then spend their day observing themselves as someone completely different, then go to bed wondering why their life feels so scattered and unstable. Here's what's happening at the quantum level. Every time you shift your self-observation, every time you identify with a different version of yourself, you're literally jumping between parallel realities. One moment you're in the reality where you're confident and capable, the next moment you're in the reality where you're insecure and struggling. Your consciousness is bouncing around like a pinball machine, and the universe has no idea which signal to respond to. This is why most people's lives feel so chaotic and unpredictable. They're not maintaining quantum coherence, they're not staying consistent with their identity observation. They're constantly collapsing into different versions of themselves, based on their mood, their circumstances, their fears, their hopes. And each time they shift, they're essentially starting over in a new quantum reality, with new rules, new possibilities, new limitations. But when you achieve quantum coherence, when you maintain consistent observation of your true identity, regardless of external circumstances, something extraordinary happens. The universe starts responding to your signal with increasing clarity and power. Opportunities start aligning with your consistent identity broadcast. People start seeing you as who you really are instead of getting confused by mixed signals. Let me give you a concrete example of how this plays out in real life. Imagine you're in a business meeting and someone challenges your ideas. If you're operating from quantum chaos, you might immediately collapse into your insecure identity. You start observing yourself as someone who doesn't belong, someone who's out of their league, someone who should just stay quiet and blend in. That observation instantly shifts you into a reality where your ideas have no power, where your voice doesn't matter, where opportunities slip away. But if you're operating from quantum coherence, you maintain your observation of yourself as someone who brings valuable perspectives, someone whose ideas matter, someone who naturally commands respect. That consistent identity observation keeps you anchored in a reality where challenges become opportunities to demonstrate your value, where resistance becomes a chance to show your conviction, where what others perceive as conflict, you experience as collaboration. The difference isn't in what happens externally. The same person challenges your ideas in both scenarios. The difference is in which quantum reality you choose to inhabit through your identity observation, and that choice determines not just how you feel about the situation, but how the situation actually unfolds, how other people respond, what opportunities emerge from the interaction. This is where most people get confused about manifestation and attraction. They think it's about visualizing outcomes or affirming what they want. But quantum identity change is much more fundamental than that. It's about becoming so coherent in your identity observation that reality has no choice but to reflect that coherence back to you. Your subconscious mind is constantly broadcasting your identity frequency to the quantum field. This broadcast is happening 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, whether you're aware of it or not. It's like a radio station that never goes off the air, and just like a radio station, the clarity and consistency of your signal determines how many people can tune in and receive your message. When you're operating from a broken identity, your subconscious is broadcasting static. The signal is weak, inconsistent, full of interference. People pick up on this energetically and they respond accordingly. They see you as uncertain, unreliable, not quite ready for the opportunities you say you want. They might like you, they might even want to help you, but something feels off about the signal you're sending. But when you shift into quantum coherence with your true identity, your subconscious starts broadcasting in high definition. The signal becomes clear, strong, consistent. People don't just hear what you're saying, they feel who you're being. They sense your coherence, and they naturally want to align with it, support it, participate in it. This is why some people can walk into a room and immediately command attention without saying a word. It's not about charisma or confidence in the traditional sense. It's about quantum coherence. Their identity observation is so consistent, so clear, so aligned with their true nature that their subconscious broadcast cuts through all the noise and static that most people are generating. Now here's something that might surprise you. The opportunities that are meant for you, the ones that will truly fulfill you and allow you to express your highest potential, they're already quantum entangled with your true identity. They're not random possibilities floating around in the universe waiting to be grabbed by whoever works hardest or gets luckiest. They're specifically calibrated to your authentic frequency, your real identity, your true purpose. This means that when you're operating from a false identity, when you're observing yourself as someone you're not, you're literally invisible to the opportunities that are meant for you. It's not that they don't exist. It's that they exist in a different quantum reality than the one you're inhabiting. They're broadcasting on a frequency that your false identity can't receive. But the moment you shift into coherence with your true identity, those opportunities suddenly become visible, accessible, inevitable. It's like tuning into the right radio station after months of listening to static. The music was always there. You just weren't on the right frequency to hear it. This is why people who undergo genuine quantum identity change often say that opportunities started appearing out of nowhere. From their perspective, it seems like magic. But from a quantum perspective, it makes perfect sense. They finally aligned with the frequency where their true opportunities were always broadcasting. The challenge is that most people are terrified to let go of their false identity because it feels like the only identity they have. They've been observing themselves as limited, struggling, not quite enough for so long that it feels like reality itself. They can't imagine who they would be without their story of limitation, their familiar struggles, their comfortable complaints. But here's what I want you to understand. Your false identity isn't protecting you from anything. It's not keeping you safe or humble or realistic. It's keeping you trapped in a quantum reality that's far smaller than what's actually available to you. Every day you spend identifying with limitation is a day you're not available to the opportunities, relationships, and experiences that are seeking you at your true frequency. The process of quantum identity death isn't about destroying who you are. It's about releasing who you're not so that who you really are can finally emerge. It's about stopping the exhausting work of maintaining a false identity so that you can put that energy toward expressing your authentic identity. Think about how much energy you spend every day managing your false identity. You have to remember your limitations, defend your story, explain why you can't do certain things or be certain ways. You have to carefully monitor your behavior to make sure it's consistent with your identity as someone who struggles, someone who's not quite ready, someone who needs more time or more resources or more help. All of that energy, all of that attention, all of that consciousness that you're investing in maintaining a false identity could be redirected toward embodying your true identity. Instead of spending your day observing yourself as limited, you could spend your day observing yourself as unlimited. Instead of looking for evidence of why you can't, you could be looking for evidence of why you can. Instead of identifying with your problems, you could be identifying with your potential. This shift in attention, this redirection of consciousness, this is what creates the quantum leap. Not gradually, not over time, but instantly. The moment you stop investing your awareness in limitation and start investing it in possibility, you jump timelines, you shift realities, you become available to a completely different set of quantum possibilities. But here's where it gets really interesting. Your true identity isn't just some improved version of your current self. It's not like taking your existing personality and making it more confident or more successful or more attractive. Your true identity is something entirely different, something that transcends the categories and limitations that your false identity operates within. When people undergo genuine quantum identity change, they often report that they don't just feel different, they feel like a completely different person. Not because they've changed their personality, but because they've remembered who they actually are underneath all the conditioning and programming and false beliefs. They've accessed a version of themselves that was always there but had been obscured by layers of artificial identity. This true identity has its own way of moving through the world, its own way of responding to challenges, its own way of attracting opportunities. It doesn't try to be successful, because it already is successful at the quantum level. It doesn't chase opportunities because opportunities are naturally drawn to its frequency. It doesn't need to prove its worth, because its worth is inherent, unquestionable, absolute. From this identity, the idea that you have to work hard to get opportunities seems absurd. Not because you're lazy or entitled, but because you understand that opportunities are a natural byproduct of authentic identity expression. When you're being who you really are, when you're operating from your true frequency, opportunities aren't something you have to create or attract or manifest. They're something that happens automatically as a result of your coherent presence in the world. This is what I mean when I say that opportunities will start hunting you down. When you're operating from quantum coherence with your true identity, you become like a lighthouse broadcasting a clear, consistent signal. Ships that are meant to find you, opportunities that are meant to be yours, people who are meant to collaborate with you, they all start navigating toward your signal because they recognize it as home. The wealthy understand this principle intuitively. They know that their primary job isn't to chase opportunities, but to maintain such clear identity coherence that the right opportunities can find them. They know that their value isn't something they have to prove or demonstrate, but something they have to embody and broadcast. They know that success isn't something they have to achieve, but something they have to become available to receive. This is why you'll often hear successful people say that their biggest breakthrough came when they stopped trying so hard and started being themselves. What they're describing is the moment they shifted from false identity, striving to true identity embodiment. The moment they stopped trying to become someone else and started allowing themselves to be who they really are. But society doesn't teach you this. Society teaches you that identity is fixed, that you are who you are because of your past, your circumstances, your genetics, your upbringing. Society teaches you that if you want to change your life, you have to change your actions, your habits, your environment. Society teaches you that transformation is a long, difficult process that requires discipline and sacrifice and endless effort. All of these teachings are designed to keep you trapped in false identity, to keep you believing that you have to earn the right to be who you really are. Because if you knew that you could quantum shift your identity in an instant, if you knew that your true identity is already successful and magnetic and abundant, the entire system of control would collapse overnight. The people who profit from your struggle, who build their empires on your sense of inadequacy, they need you to believe that change is hard, that success is rare, that opportunities are scarce. They need you to stay identified with limitation so that you'll keep buying their solutions, their products, their promises of eventual transformation. But quantum identity change doesn't require their permission or their products. It requires only your willingness to observe yourself differently, to identify with possibility instead of limitation, to choose coherence instead of chaos. It requires only your decision to stop defending who you're not and start embodying who you are. The moment you make this shift, the moment you quantum leap from false identity to true identity, everything changes. Not just your internal experience, but your external reality. The people in your life start responding to you differently. New people start showing up who are aligned with your true frequency. Opportunities that were invisible suddenly become obvious. Resources that seemed unavailable suddenly become accessible. This isn't magic, it's quantum mechanics. When you change your fundamental identity observation, you change the probability waves that surround you. You shift into a parallel reality where different outcomes are not just possible but inevitable. You become available to receive what was always meant for you, but couldn't reach you while you were identified with limitation. So let me ask you something, and I want you to really consider this question because your answer will determine which quantum reality you inhabit moving forward. If you could observe yourself as already successful, already magnetic, already living the life you desire, what would stop you from making that choice right now? What attachment to your current identity is so strong that you would choose limitation over possibility? Because here's what I know about you even though we've never met. Your true identity is extraordinary. Your authentic frequency is magnetic. Your real purpose is powerful. You've just been observing yourself as someone else, someone smaller, someone less capable than who you really are. And that observation has been creating a reality that matches that limited identity, instead of the unlimited reality that's actually available to you. The question isn't whether you can change. The question is whether you're willing to let go of who you think you are to discover who you really are. Are you ready to abandon your broken version and step into the identity that opportunities are already seeking? The most profound shift happens when you realize that your true identity doesn't just attract different opportunities, it attracts opportunities differently. Let me explain what I mean by this because it's going to change how you see every interaction, every possibility, every moment of your life moving forward. When you're operating from false identity, opportunities come to you as tests. They show up requiring you to prove yourself, to demonstrate your worthiness, to convince someone that you deserve what you're asking for. Every job interview becomes an interrogation. Every business proposal becomes a plea. Every relationship becomes a negotiation where you're trying to establish your value. This creates what I call the proving paradigm. You spend your entire life trying to prove that you're good enough, smart enough, worthy enough to receive what you want. And because you're approaching opportunities from this energy of having to prove yourself, you attract opportunities that are designed to test you rather than celebrate you. But when you quantum shift into your true identity, opportunities start showing up as recognitions. Instead of having to prove your worth, people immediately recognize your value. Instead of having to convince anyone of anything, you find yourself in conversations where others are trying to convince you to work with them, to join their project, to be part of their vision. This isn't because you've become arrogant or entitled. It's because you're finally broadcasting the frequency of your authentic value, and people who are aligned with that frequency can sense it immediately. They don't need you to prove anything, because they can feel the coherence of who you are. They don't need references or credentials or lengthy explanations because your presence itself is the credential. I want you to imagine what your life would look like if every opportunity that came to you was a recognition rather than a test. What if job interviews became conversations about how you could contribute, rather than interrogations about whether you're qualified? What if business meetings became collaborations rather than competitions? What if relationships formed naturally around mutual recognition rather than mutual need? This is what becomes available when you embody quantum coherence with your true identity. You stop being someone who has to earn opportunities and start being someone who naturally receives them. You stop being someone who has to chase success and start being someone who success seeks out. The science behind this is fascinating. When you're operating from false identity, your nervous system is constantly in a state of subtle stress. You're always slightly activated, always slightly defended, always slightly trying to manage how others perceive you. This creates what researchers call incoherent heart rhythm patterns. Your heart, brain, and nervous system are not synchronized, and this incoherence is broadcast through your electromagnetic field to everyone around you. People pick up on this incoherence unconsciously. They sense that something is slightly off, slightly forced, slightly inauthentic. They might not be able to articulate what they're feeling, but they respond accordingly. They become more cautious, more questioning, more likely to put you through hoops and tests before they trust you with opportunities. But when you shift into true identity embodiment, your entire physiology changes. Your heart rhythm becomes coherent. Your nervous system relaxes into its natural state. Your brain waves synchronize with your heart's rhythm. This creates what's called psychophysiological coherence, and it's broadcast through your field as a signal of authenticity, reliability, and natural authority. When people encounter someone in this state of coherence, their own nervous systems naturally entrain to that frequency. They feel calmer, more trusting, more open. They don't need to test or question because they're receiving clear, consistent signals that this person is exactly who they appear to be. There's no incongruence to trigger their defensive mechanisms. This is why some people seem to effortlessly inspire trust and confidence, while others struggle to be taken seriously no matter how hard they try. It's not about charisma or communication skills, though those can be factors. It's about the fundamental coherence between who you are and who you're presenting yourself to be. Most people are presenting a carefully constructed version of themselves that they think others want to see, while simultaneously trying to hide or manage the parts of themselves they think are unacceptable. This creates massive internal incoherence that gets broadcast to everyone they meet. People sense the incongruence and respond with caution, skepticism, and testing. But your true identity doesn't need to be constructed or managed or hidden. It simply is. And when you embody it fully, when you stop trying to be anyone other than who you authentically are, that coherence becomes magnetic. People are drawn to authenticity because it's so rare in a world full of people trying to be someone else. Here's something that might challenge everything you've been taught about success and opportunity. The opportunities that require you to be someone other than who you are, the ones that demand you suppress your authentic nature or compromise your true values, those aren't actually opportunities. They're distractions. They're detours that take you further away from your real path, your real purpose, your real fulfillment. Your true identity is quantum entangled with opportunities that celebrate who you are, not opportunities that require you to be someone else. When you're operating from authentic identity coherence, the opportunities that show up don't just match your skills or qualifications. They match your essence, your purpose, your deepest values and desires. This means that success stops being about fitting into existing opportunities and starts being about opportunities reshaping themselves around who you are. Instead of trying to squeeze yourself into someone else's vision of what you should be, you start attracting visions that are specifically designed around your unique gifts, your authentic expression, your natural way of contributing to the world. Let me share something that successful people know but rarely talk about. The most powerful opportunities, the ones that create real wealth and fulfillment and impact, they don't exist until the right person shows up to embody them. They're not sitting there waiting for someone qualified to fill them. They're quantum possibilities that collapse into reality when someone with the right frequency appears. This is why you'll often hear entrepreneurs say that they didn't find their opportunity found them. What they're describing is the moment when their authentic identity coherence reached a level where a quantum possibility that was specifically calibrated to their frequency could finally manifest in physical reality. Your true identity isn't just attracting existing opportunities, it's actually creating new opportunities that didn't exist before you showed up. Opportunities that are perfectly designed around your unique combination of gifts, experiences, perspectives, and passions. Opportunities that no one else could fulfill because they're quantum matched to your specific frequency signature. But this only happens when you stop trying to fit into other people's opportunities and start embodying the frequency that allows your unique opportunities to find you. It happens when you stop asking, "What opportunities are available?" and start asking, "What opportunities am I available to?" The difference is profound. When you're trying to fit into existing opportunities, you're always slightly out of alignment. You might be qualified, you might even be successful, but there's always a sense that you're playing someone else's game by someone else's rules. You're succeeding, but you're not fully alive, not fully expressed, not fully yourself. But when you embody your true identity so coherently that new opportunities reshape themselves around you, work stops feeling like work. Success stops feeling like struggle. Achievement stops feeling like sacrifice. You're not trying to succeed, you're simply expressing who you are. And success is the natural byproduct of that authentic expression. This is what I mean when I say opportunities will hunt you down. When you're operating from this level of identity coherence, you become a unique solution to problems that people didn't even know they had. You become the answer to questions that organizations and individuals are asking at a subconscious level. You become the missing piece that makes other people's visions complete. From this place, you don't have to convince anyone of your value, because your value is immediately obvious to anyone who needs what you naturally provide. You don't have to compete for opportunities, because the opportunities that are truly yours have no competition. You don't have to worry about being replaced because you're not filling a generic role. You're fulfilling a unique function that only you can perform. But here's what stops most people from accessing this level of opportunity magnetism. They're so attached to their story of struggle, their identity as someone who has to work hard for everything they get, that they can't imagine a reality where success comes naturally, where opportunities seek them out, where their authentic expression is inherently valuable. They've been conditioned to believe that if something comes easily, it's not valuable, that if they don't have to struggle for it, they don't deserve it, that if opportunities are flowing to them naturally, there must be something wrong or suspicious about it. This conditioning keeps them trapped in the proving paradigm, always working harder than necessary, always making things more complicated than they need to be. Your true identity doesn't know how to struggle because struggle is incoherent with authentic expression. When you're being who you really are, when you're operating from your natural frequency, everything flows. Not because life becomes easy, but because you're no longer fighting against your own nature. You're no longer trying to be someone you're not, or do things in ways that don't align with who you are. The challenges don't disappear, but they transform. Instead of obstacles that block your path, they become opportunities to demonstrate your unique capabilities. Instead of problems that drain your energy, they become puzzles that engage your natural problem-solving abilities. Instead of struggles that wear you down, they become adventures that call forth your highest potential. This is the quantum reality that becomes available when you abandon your broken version and fully embody your true identity. A reality where opportunities don't just come to you, they're literally created by your presence. A reality where success isn't something you achieve, but something you embody. A reality where your authentic expression is so valuable that the world reshapes itself to accommodate and celebrate who you are. Are you starting to feel the possibility of this shift? Can you sense the version of yourself that's been waiting for you to stop defending limitation and start embracing your true quantum nature? The moment has come for you to make a choice that will determine the trajectory of your entire existence. You can continue identifying with the broken version of yourself, the one that has to chase opportunities, prove worth, and struggle for recognition. Or you can quantum leap into the identity that you've always been underneath all the conditioning, all the programming, all the false beliefs about who you're supposed to be. But understand this, once you make this shift, once you truly embody your authentic identity, there's no going back. You can't unsee what you've seen, unknow what you've known, unfeel what you've felt. The old reality of limitation and struggle will become impossible to inhabit because you'll have experienced the coherence, the flow, the magnetic attraction of operating from your true frequency. This terrifies some people because they've become comfortable with their limitations. They've built their entire sense of self around their struggles, their story of not being enough, their identity as someone who has to work harder than everyone else. Letting go of that identity feels like death because, in a quantum sense, it is death. The death of who you thought you were to make space for who you actually are. But I want you to consider something. What if the life you're living right now, the identity you're defending so fiercely, is actually the smaller version of what's available to you? What if everything you think you know about your limitations is just outdated programming that's keeping you trapped in a reality that's far beneath your true potential? Your authentic identity isn't waiting for you to become worthy of it. It isn't waiting for you to develop more skills or gain more experience or overcome more obstacles. It's waiting for you to stop observing yourself as someone who needs to become worthy and start recognizing that you already are worthy. You already are capable. You already are the person that opportunities are seeking. The quantum field around you right now is pregnant with possibilities that are calibrated to your true frequency. Opportunities that would fulfill you completely. Relationships that would nourish you deeply. Experiences that would expand you infinitely. They're all there, broadcasting their availability, waiting for you to tune into the frequency where they exist. But they can't reach you while you're identified with limitation. They can't find you while you're hiding behind the story of not being ready, not being enough, not being the type of person who gets to live an extraordinary life. Every day you spend in false identity is a day those opportunities have to wait. Those relationships have to search elsewhere. Those experiences have to find someone else who's available to receive them. The tragedy isn't that you might fail if you make this shift. The tragedy is that you might succeed beyond your wildest imagination, and you'll realize how much time you wasted identifying with a version of yourself that was never real in the first place. So here's what I want you to do right now in this moment. As you're listening to these words, I want you to feel into the version of yourself that already exists in the quantum field. The version that's confident without arrogance, successful without struggle, magnetic without manipulation. The version that attracts opportunities not by chasing them, but by being so authentically valuable that they have no choice but to seek you out. Feel that version of yourself. Don't think about it, don't analyze it, don't question whether you deserve it. Just feel it. Feel how that version moves through the world. Feel how that version responds to challenges. Feel how that version shows up in relationships, in business, in every area of life. That feeling, that sense of who you are when you're not defending limitations, that's not a fantasy. That's not wishful thinking. That's your true identity calling to you across the quantum field, reminding you of who you've always been underneath all the programming and conditioning. The shift from false identity to true identity happens in an instant, not gradually, not over time, but in a single moment of recognition, a single choice to stop observing yourself as limited and start observing yourself as unlimited. The moment you make that choice, reality begins reorganizing itself around your new frequency. Opportunities that were invisible suddenly become obvious. People who couldn't see your value suddenly recognize your worth. Resources that seemed unavailable suddenly become accessible, not because the external world has changed, but because you've shifted into the quantum reality where these things were always available to you. This is your invitation to make that shift right now. Not tomorrow, not when you feel ready, not when you've figured everything out. Right now in this moment, while the quantum field is activated by these words, while your consciousness is expanded by these possibilities, while your true identity is calling to you with unprecedented clarity. If you're feeling a spark of recognition, if something inside you is saying yes to this possibility, hit that subscribe button. Not just because you want to hear more content, but because you're ready to identify with the version of yourself that naturally attracts the information, the opportunities, the connections that support your highest expression. And I want you to do something else. In the comments below, I want you to drop one word that captures who you are when you're not defending limitations. Not who you want to become, but who you already are underneath all the false identity programming. One word that represents your true frequency, your authentic nature, your quantum identity. Don't overthink it. Don't worry about whether it's the right word or whether you can live up to it. Just feel into your true essence and let that word emerge. Because the act of naming your authentic identity, of declaring it publicly, of claiming it in front of this community, that's a quantum choice. That's a moment of identity collapse where you choose possibility over limitation, truth over programming, your authentic self over your conditioned self. The people who are ready to make this shift, who are tired of living smaller than who they really are, who are done with chasing opportunities instead of attracting them, they're going to recognize themselves in these words. They're going to feel the resonance of truth, the excitement of possibility, the relief of finally understanding why their old approach wasn't working. But more than that, they're going to feel the call of their true identity, the pull of their authentic frequency, the magnetic attraction of the reality that's been waiting for them to choose it. This is that moment of choice. This is that quantum instant where you decide who you're going to identify as moving forward. The broken version that has to prove its worth, or the authentic version that's inherently valuable. The struggling version that has to chase opportunities, or the magnetic version that opportunities seek out. Your true identity has been patient, but it's also been persistent. It's been calling to you through every dissatisfaction with your current reality, every sense that you're capable of more, every moment when you've felt the gap between who you are and who you're being. That calling isn't going to stop. If anything, it's going to get stronger, because your authentic self knows that this is your time, this is your moment, this is your opportunity to finally align with the quantum reality where you don't just survive, you thrive, where you don't just get by, you flourish, where you don't just exist, you create magic simply by being who you really are. The choice is yours, and the time is now. Will you abandon your broken version and step into the identity that opportunities are already hunting for? Or will you continue defending limitations that were never real in the first place? Your quantum identity is waiting, and so are all the possibilities that come with it.